So, what is the loudest decibel that somebody can privately talk to the TV without being considered crazy? Because Jules, I was yelling at you. Hello, everyone. Terrence here with Hollywood Already Did It. If you haven't already, go ahead, like, share, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, ring that bell below. Anytime we have something, you will be among the first to know. Episode 8 of Silo is here. It's called Hanna. And a lot of the things that I've been feeling for quite some time. The person I didn't trust from the moment I saw them on screen. Yeah, it turns out I was correct. Um, and we get a pretty rude awakening, and Jules sadly is put in a very, very tight spot. But like always, she manages to get her way out of it just in the nick of time. So this episode picks up with a flashback. It starts with a flashback with Jules remembering Hannah. Now, this is interesting because earlier in the season, we've seen flashbacks of Jules with her father, and we've seen that side of things, how he left her mechanical, how he was cool to just leave her there, and how he didn't seem that interested or sort of aloof once his wife passed and about raising his daughter. And now you sort of get the other side of that coin to see exactly how and why he felt that way. So it starts off with Hannah going on a trip with Jules and exchanging pills for a rabbit. That's what we learned is a rabbit. And the rabbit has an illness, has a hole in its heart that she's planning to fix. Do some relics to go fix. In the present day, Jules is still on the run from last time when Gloria told her that the brigade was coming and she found the hard drive in her vent. She's still on the run. She's taken solace in hiding in the nursery because that's a blind spot. Most of medical is a blind spot. So she's hiding there, babies. Brigade actually goes in there to search, and they're kind of like, "Why are we here? There's not going to be anybody at the babies." So they kind of move off. So her scent is sort of kept clean at that point. But Sims is investigating and interrogating Gloria. Um, Gloria's being a bit of a tightwad. She's not giving up too much information. But what's interesting here, she knows him from being the fertility doctor of the silo and knows that he has a kid and knows that there was a moment when he went through the whole cycle that a lot of people do where a kid was not involved to him. And it seems like he was granted a kid. Now, that means for me, he had to do something back in then where he gave himself up to the overseers of the silo. He did something that made it them okay with giving him a kid and basically giving his life to the silo. And she's well aware of it. And he feels a slight bit of um, respect for her for helping him in that cause. But he's still the bottom line. I gotta put you back under. I gotta put you back in Alice in Wonderland world where you don't remember a thing. But give me an information that you have on Jules. She gives him something enough to kind of get him off the trail. And then she asks him, "Do you think do you really think you'll win?" And he says, "We have to." And then the drug is administered, and she goes back into her slumber, which is sort of sad because for a brief moment you got to see Gloria with a little bit of fight in her, a little bit of pizzazz. But she did enough to spark the flame to bring the flamethrowers back through Jules. But now she's going back into her forever slumber on the beach, looking at the water that she never got to see. Um, Boo-hoo for Gloria. That's sad. Sims meets with one of his brigade folks and lets us know that Jules has a red level relic. The hard drive is a red level relic. It's the top of the class. And we need her found immediately. It's like, don't harm her. Like, bring her to me, but we need to have her caught immediately. And the leader of the brigade is like, she's probably found some dead spots. We have a lot of those in medical. And he's like, well, I don't care how you do it. Fix that. While this is happening, while the interrogation is going on overnight, Jules is trying to break in, get some information about the relic. She won't plug it in because she thinks she's aware that if she plugs that in, they'll immediately know where it's at. So she can't decrypt it or figure it out by using her clearance level. She's trying to go about other ways to figure out what exactly is on this and what is in there. Does so to the point where she just falls asleep there. While she's asleep, she remembers a situation where she and her mom, when they brought the rabbit back home, they do a little open heart surgery, if you will. And she cuts the rabbit open and does a little bit of surgery. But she has a magnifying glass, which we all know by now is illegal in the silo. She has a magnifying glass and shows it to Jules. And Jules like, his heart is so big. And she's like, well, it's not. He has a really tiny heart, but it's impossible to operate on him without this tool, without this magnifying glass. So having this helps me be able to like look in and actually give him the care that he needs. And she's like, well, could that have helped my brother, her and Hannah's son? And Hannah's like, yeah, this could have done wonders for them. And I don't know why the silo is refusing for us to let us have these. But I think if they see this and they allow us to do this, we can help so many other people. Like she's doing this because she thinks this tool can help aid in others. Jules wakes up and is getting a call from the walkie from Billings telling like, hey, you need to get back to the precinct immediately. She gets up there and the brigade is there just ransacking the place. They are turning things over left and right looking for the hard drive. To which she's like, I have no idea what you're talking about. There are no relics here. Billings is like, what are they looking for? She's like, I'm not going into that right now. Don't worry about it. I don't know what they're talking about. While this ransacking is taking place, it triggers a memory for Jules where she remembers where her mom, their old place was getting ransacked and people are running through looking for the magnifying glass. Now, she, at this time, though Hanna believed that her husband, Dr. Nichols, is the one who dropped a dime on her. She just swears up and down like you were the one who did this. And because of that, Jules also subsequently feels like that's pretty much the way that this played out. They are about to cause some major harm and do some major things to that, to which Hanna eventually just hands over the magnifying glass. She gives him the magnifying glass, and then the purveyor just breaks the glass right in front of her. And then asks, is there anything else? Are there any other paraphernalia or any type of things? She says no. He looks at Dr. Nichols, and Dr. Nichols is like, no, nothing else. So they ask if the rabbit is still alive. That was the big thing. He's like, no, the rabbit's not alive. To which point Dr. Nichols says, no, it's not alive. And they're like, okay, cool. What it looks like is that he looks like he's trying to get an answer from him because you are the one who led us this way. So you let us know, like, are they on the up and up? So that just gave Hanna more fuel for the flame. Like, yeah, I told you were in on this. And even as an audience member, we are kind of like, yeah, clearly that's the head nod of like, nah, they good. They ain't telling nobody else. But Dr. Nichols was lying for her because after they leave, Jules does go and the bunny rabbit is healthy and safe. And Hanna was right. She was able to save and help that rabbit. The brigade has left the precinct in shambles and has taken a few of the some items, not the hard drive they don't have, but a couple of relics that were there that they take up. And at that point, Jules tells Billings that the judge is not the person that is making any type of rules here. They're not the one in command. They have no saying whatsoever. To which Billings is like, well, how do you know that? He's like, who's in charge? And she's like, Sims. Sims is in charge. Sims is the one running this up and down. He is the one that's pulling all the strings here. At that point, Billings is kind of like, gives the inference that this search that they just did was illegal by a couple of counts of the pact. Nobody knows the pact better than Billings. She runs up to Sims' office and arrests him, puts him in cuffs. And he's like, well, you don't have any grounds to arrest me on. And he's like, well, that search was illegal on 2 counts of the pact. He's, oh, now all your pact research and looking up is working on you. He's like, well, Billings, with nothing else, is steadfast. He is a coward to all, and he's going by what the pact says. The pact says this, the pact says that, then that's what he's going by as the pact. So he puts cuffs on on Sims, and Sims is like, you're going to regret this. To which she responds, I doubt that. Jules, it's going to bite you in the butt. She then tells the other brigade person that's still there, like, I want you to return every single relic that you got down there back in the exact same place that you did. She closes the door. She basically has the office to herself for a bit. And she starts searching through that office to look for something to kind of help aid her in her quest. And when she looks for it, what she finds is her mom's dossier, her file. And she looks at it and then immediately is sort of taken aback by it. She goes to go see her father and is sort of wants to hear his side of the story. And at this point, she feels apologetic because she, all her life, has sort of blamed her father for the death of her mother. when in fact he had nothing to do with it. Turns out, even back then, there were mirrors watching everybody. So he never dropped a dime about the magnifying glass. They were watching and saw the magnifying glass. To which she's like, that's what I was always saying. But she swore up and down. She swore up and down that I told her, and it's like, and I would never tell on her. And Jules is kind of at that point feeling like crap. She's like, oh crap, I thought that too. And I turned my back on you this whole time. And the reason why he felt so comfortable just letting her stay in mechanical is because this way of checking everything or questioning everything or pushing everything or being on that envelope, that push the needle envelope, is what got Hanna killed. And he's like, and Jules, you had that same demeanor. But I think maybe if we take that focus and focus on mechanical, you would have just gotten away from that and you wouldn't go down this path. Turns out if it's meant to be, it's meant to be. But he says, I tried to fix your mom. Like after they broke her magnifying glass, they broke her. And I tried back and forth, up and down to try to fix her, and I just couldn't. And when I couldn't, and she lost her life, I felt that I needed to save you and protect you. So then maintenance shows up at Dr. Nichols' office and they want to do a research about the vents. And Jules asks, hey, did you ask for a work order? She's like, no. And then the nurse asked for a work order. Like, nope, no one has asked for a work order. Jules is then at that point like, okay, here's what's about to happen. They're going to come in and put cameras in. Like, because this is a one area of this place that they have blind spots, so they're about to change that and put cameras in. She grabs a hard drive and gets up out of there because she can't. That can no longer be a place of safe holding. As she goes down the stairs, there's like checkpoints that are starting to pop up all over the place where they're checking everybody's bag to see where these relics, whoever has his hard drive, they're trying to find that out. Jules avoids that checkpoint and kind of goes back up. So then we see Sims in prison, kind of almost basically testing the question to see who's loyal to him and who's loyal to like the job. And so they give him a cup of coffee at his request, but he also asks to see if he can use the radio, to which he doesn't at that point. But I'd be willing to believe that because of what takes place on the back end of this, he does eventually get that radio call. Billings goes home and his wife is super concerned about his stress levels. Like he's looking more stressed, disheveled. And she has heard word that Jules is sort of in line or trying to galvanize this new rebellion. He's like, what are you talking about? I've never even heard like that. He's like, this is what I'm hearing. And you seem to be on edge all the damn time. Jules sends a note to maintenance to Shirley and Shirley and the crew down there that she is going to be making her way down there in an hour. She wants to go over some things, but she doesn't make it, and it sort of gets them nervous about what's happening with her or her whereabouts. Lucas, cafeteria boy, who I told you she would try to bring in as the next person up on this rebellion tour. She gives him a note that basically says, hey, you're seeking answers. I can give you answers. Come meet me in this room. So he joins her in the room. Now, mind you, he's smitten over her too. So a little bit of this was more like, hey, I'm about to get some, more than probably like, let's start a revolution. But he goes and she pulls out the hard drives like, I need you to decode this. And I need you to code this. I need you to do it. I can't do it myself. He immediately says, you're a sheriff. You have clearance. Like, I can't do this myself because if I do, it's immediately going to flag and everybody's going to start coming for me. So I need you to do this off the grid and figure out what's on this. And he's pretty reluctant. Part of it, she mentions George's name in this and she refers to him as a friend, but he deciphers what that means. And he's like, oh no, you want to use me. He feels like he's being used and there's no really real chance of a relationship or whatever it is he's looking for with her. And Jules is like, we don't have time for this BS. Like, put your feelings away. Cut all that mess out. Can you do this or not? To which he then is like, well, I could, but my mama is ill. And like, if I'm gone, she's not going to feel real well and stuff. So, dude, look, I ain't got time for this. For real. Jules is kind of like, look, your mama, for real? This is what you want to talk to me about. Your mama. Just say you don't want to do this. She smashes the mirror and shows that there's a camera back there that has the sensors. Like, they've been watching us the whole time. They know what we're doing all the time. But if this is the world you want to live in, if you want to hide behind the fact that your mom's not well and whatever, cool, have at it. They're about to come here, so you might want to get up out of this room. So she splits off and takes off, and he splits off as soon as he sees the brigade coming. So he knows that she knows what she's talking about. but it's a little late at that point. On our way back down, another checkpoint hits, and this checkpoint person is really like, I don't care that you're the sheriff. She's like, you know who I am. And then to bypass that checkpoint, Bernard shows up, which immediately my spidey senses went up, because from the beginning of this season, I said that I don't trust Bernard. From the second that they went down that silo and he brought up how she used stole tape, and how it seemed like Bernard and Sims were two peas in a pod. I have always felt a way about him. Turns out I was right. Bernard shows his true colors as he takes Jules away from the checkpoint. I heard about you arresting Sims, which means at some point Sims got that radio call. And she takes him to a private spot. So they go into the crop towers where everybody is laid to rest. So there's no cameras there and there's no sound there. So you can't see anything. They are completely off the grid and hidden, which is a danger to Jules. Because at that point, Bernard sort of shows his hand by making slip that he's looking for the hard drive. And he's like, well, crap, now I've said the hard drive. So I guess you know what I'm looking for. And then all of a sudden you see Sims come up behind her. So right now she's dead to rights. But the two of them and the brigade showing up, they're never dead to rights. And then Bernard says, I'm sorry, Jules, did I just hear you correctly? Did you just say that you want to go outside? Which we've known is the sort of terror code that says, if you do this, we're putting you out of the silo and killing you out for pasture. And that's what they're saying she just said. And the person corroborating that is Sims. So they now have two people who are of high power in the silo saying that you have asked to go outside. And Sims kind of cracks wise, like, what is it with sheriffs wanting to go outside? Like, that's two sheriffs in just as many weeks. Clearly, they're trying to get rid of Jules as fast as they possibly can. And quench that flame before the flamethrowers do return. Bernard goes on about how the founders put him in place is to keep balance. He's the person to sort of get rid of problems and any problems that arise. And right now, out of the last 140 years, Jules, you have been the biggest one. So now we got to get rid of you. And so Jules takes off, starts running through the crops. She fights off about 2 or 3 of them. Then they get the better of her and detain and arrest her. One thing that happens in the flashback, which I think is going to pretty much important why they show us the scene that happens in this, is that Jules calls out people who don't come to her mother's aid in her funeral. Like, it's just Jules and her father at the funeral. And she's kind of like, well, where's everybody else? Like, we've helped so many people. Why is nobody else fighting for this or speaking up about this? Something needs to be said about this. And especially calling them cowards. And then she lets that bunny rabbit go. Back in present day, Billings has Sheriff Dickles, Jules, in cuffs, and they're heading up the stairs with Sims just ahead of them. Billings is sort of reading her rights to Jules, where Jules is kind of pleading, hey, I didn't say those words. They said those words. Billings like, well, you can go in front of adjudication and get an appeal and everything, go through the process, but you're going to have to take that to judicial. And she's like, he is judicial. Like, he is who I'd have to go through. And clearly he is the one who's putting me in this situation. To which then, to agitate Sims, even though he's already told her to be quiet, Sims then punches her right in the stomach. That's important because there were people watching when that happened. There were a kid and his father who were off on the side who watched her get punched and sort of, in a way, she didn't die, but sort of act as a quasi-martyr. Like, maybe those two people, those eyes that just saw this clearly act of abuse that's happening within the system, they've seen it, maybe they'll speak up and say, no, they punched her, and it sort of galvanized a group of people. Because I think that was the sort of whole point of showing us that people are watching them as well. It's at that point, Tim's kind of like, I told you, you will regret arresting me. This is where this show does such a great job of playing long form storytelling, because for the most part, the Billings degenerative disease didn't really come into play. You're like, we knew about it, but he kept it under management. He's stressed right now, but for the most part, he kept it in tow. Until now, he's taking Jules up the stairs, he begins to shake enough that allows Jules a little bit of a wiggle room. She wiggles past, knocks him off, pushes past Sims, and then heads to the silo edge and jumps off steps. Well, damn, that is a fantastic episode. This is a show that continues to just ratchet up. And while it may not go in with intensity, there's just enough of a world being built that you actually feel like you're being immersed in this world each week, which is just a testament to the writers, a testament to the acting that's happening here. Now, I will say this: I saw the Bernard turn a mile away, like it wasn't anything that was not obvious to me. I've not read the book, so I don't have that to go off of. I'm sure book readers, you knew this long before I did. But it just played in a way that I could see that that's where this was going, especially since they had not introduced any new characters. It all sort of fell on Bernard. That, however, did not take away from the reveal or the fact that the episode was built with such richness. I love that they don't explain everything. It feels like Sims eventually did get that radio call, and he's alerted Bernard, and Bernard kind of was like, "Cool, I'll fix all of this." But we always knew why. As much as Sims is in it, there's somebody. He's too young ish. Obviously, Common is older, but he's too young to have been the person who started all this. There has to be somebody over him. So it was. I felt it was Bernard the whole time. And truth be told, here we go. I think it's also great that we got to see her father. She and her father actually come to some sort of solace and close their chapter and sort of reunite. You could see that for the first time in a while, she felt genuinely sorry that she had eventually just abandoned her father, and they have had some sort of coming together moment, which is pretty impactful. I think it's also fascinating that my brain was Lucas would be the person that she should go to as like the number two, because somebody who was so watching the stars and so willing to like search for knowledge and look for more and look for more. When he is granted the opportunity to do so, he's kind of like, no, maybe I shouldn't. Like the system, the world is so built into his DNA that he is just absolutely freaked out about even the thought of doing so. Will he change his mind after he saw the brigade? Who knows? But at that moment, he's like, nah, I want to go back to the stars and let me check out my sick mama because I don't want to have nothing to do with you. That just shows you how much of a grip this world has on people. This episode sets up the final two episodes of the season, which right now are I'm salivating to get a hold of. But if you haven't heard, we have been greenlit for a second season of Silo. So whoever's read the second books, continue on. We're going to keep it. We're going to keep this party going. So I'm now fully invested, and I don't feel like I've wasted time. Because sometimes when those shows get canceled halfway through, you're like, oh, that was a crap. That was a big waste of time. Not here. We are in it for the long haul, and I can't wait to see what happens next. Again, not a cliffhanger with the Bernard stuff, but everything else is so rich and bountiful in this series, in this episode, that not being a cliffhanger really for me or a surprise for me doesn't ruin it. What did you guys think about this episode? Leave your thoughts and comments in the comments below. If you haven't already, you can follow us on Twitter at HollywoodADI. You can hit us up on email at HollywoodAlreadyDidIt@gmail.com. We also have a podcast with the same name. That's on Google Podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere that plays podcasts. We're there. And like always, I got my ticket. You got yours.